as someone who perhaps might have a tendency to overanalyze things, how do you balance the red flag versus maybe reading into something which isn't what you think it might be, maybe?
Yeah. So in the context of the book, what I'm talking about is a red flag. There are lots of them, right? But I'll just rattle off the first one that comes to mind, which is someone showing up 5 minutes late for an interview. You know, one of the ways you can interpret that is just say, well, gosh, if they can't show up on time for an interview when their behavior is under a microscope, how can we ever expect this person to do it once they're on our team? It's a reasonable question. So we generally, any single red flag like that is not disqualifying. Because we all make mistakes, and you can get caught in traffic, and by the time you look at your watch and by the time you're able to make the call, it just makes more sense to walk in the door 5 minutes late. So it's not like something like that. We're just you can't work on our team, but we're definitely going to make a note of that. And if we have 3 interviews, if you show up late for the second interview or the third interview after showing up late for the first, then that pretty much tells what we need to know. I mean, at some point that the weight of the red flags, becomes more than the applicant can bear. They just collapse under the weight of their own carrying all these red flags. So that's one example. I mean, you could use, maybe more consequential red flags, which is, you discover in the course of interviewing that they are what I would call a brilliant jerk. What I mean by that is they're very technically proficient at the position that they have, but they can never stay at a job for more than 3 or 6 months. And you ask them why, and it's like, well, my managers are terribly unreasonable. And it's like, well, yeah, we've all had unreasonable managers. When you have 10 in a row, maybe it's not the managers, maybe it's you, and we discover these things by asking a lot of questions. And one of the techniques that I describe in the hiring chapter of the book is how important it is to have interview templates or scripts for each of our interviews. We do 3 interviews. The third is more of a free form, spend the day with us. We call it a shadow day. But the first 2 are traditional interviews. And we sit down with candidates and we have a script, it's different for each position, of course. We're going to ask different questions of a salesperson than we would of a technician. But there's some overlap too. Anyway, the importance of the script is it allows us to dig into these things. And like one of the questions on the script, and these scripts are available free at jeffmorrill.com. Many of the tools that we use in our businesses every day we post it right on the website, so people could use them even if they didn't have the $20 for the book or the $5 for the ebook. In any case, those questions help us dig in to those important qualities that a person brings to a workplace, and allows us to spend the interview time talking about those instead of things that don't really have a lot of signal value, like hobbies or pets or those kinds of things, which are very common interview questions, but don't tell you really anything that you need to know.
That's a really good point. I haven't heard that said, but it is quite common for people to ask those questions, and the outcome is a little bit unclear as to why you would do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, the time is so precious. We have, those first 2 interviews. There are multiple team members on our part that participate in those, but they never run longer. I mean, realistically, it's 60 minutes. So you did those. So we have basically 2 hours between the 2 interviews to really get into to discover the traits that a person's going to bring, and you don't have a minute to waste. You really don't. So that's why we use the interview scripts. And I should mention we developed ours over time to identify, like we did some work in preparing those scripts. We wanted to make sure when we hire, again, I keep coming back to an automotive salesperson, that's as good an example as any. We identified the qualities that we're looking for in that person. And then we built the questions around those to try to discover those skills. So for an example, we know that conscientiousness is really important. For our sales process, we need an organized salesperson that can return phone calls, that can make sure if a customer orders a car with 5 or 6 accessories, that those accessories are actually on the car when the customer comes to take delivery of the car. So we have questions that address conscientiousness, in particular.